Have you ever stopped and wondered what actually happened to BlackBerry? I mean, one minute it was the most important gadget on the entire planet. Presidents had them, CEOs couldn't live without them, every celebrity was clicking away on one. And then, poof, they just vanished. Well, this is that story. It's about how a tech giant that literally defined an era was completely blindsided by a future it actually helped create. And just to get a sense of how massive this collapse was, just look at this. In 2009, BlackBerry had a 50% share of the US smartphone market. Just let that sink in for a second. Every other smartphone sold in the United States was a BlackBerry. And today, that number is basically zero. It's a rounding error. So the big question is, how on earth does a company go from total, absolute domination to practical extinction in just a handful of years? You see, before the fall, you have to understand the obsession. People were so addicted to this thing, it literally earned the nickname Crackberry. And for good reason. This wasn't just another phone. It was a full-blown cultural phenomenon. It represented this new, always-on, always-connected work culture. And having one, that was a status symbol. It told the world you were important, that you were in the know. So here it is. This is the heart of our story today. How did the company that invented the smartphone, the company that put email into all of our pockets for the very first time, fail so completely to adapt when the rules of the game changed seemingly overnight? It's like they built this impenetrable fortress, but then the rest of the world decided they'd rather live out in an open field. Okay, so let's rewind. Let's take a look at how BlackBerry built this incredible empire really on the back of one single brilliant idea: email on the go. So it all starts with this Canadian company called Research in Motion, or RIM. It was founded way back in 1984 by a couple of engineering students, Mike Lazaridis and Doug Friggin. But the real magic, the spark, that happened when Jim Balsillie, this super ambitious Harvard business grad, joined as co-CEO. You had Lazaridis, the quiet, brilliant engineer, and then you had Balsillie, the aggressive, take-no-prisoners businessman. They were the perfect team, and together they launched the BlackBerry 850 in 1999, a two-way pager that was about to change everything. So what was their secret sauce? What made this thing so special? Well, it really came down to four key things. First, push email. Your messages just appeared instantly. You didn't have to log in or refresh. Today that's standard, but back then, it felt like actual magic. Second, that keyboard. Oh, that iconic QWERTY keyboard. For anyone who had to write emails for work, nothing was faster, nothing was more accurate. Third was BBM, BlackBerry Messenger. It was basically this exclusive, super secure social network, and it created this incredibly loyal, almost cult-like user base. And finally, the security was legendary. We're talking military-grade stuff, which made it the only choice for governments and big corporations. So with that killer formula, RIM just built an absolute empire. And for a few amazing years, BlackBerry wasn't just another company in the market. For professionals, it was the market. And let's just put some numbers on that dominance because they are staggering. At their peak, they had 20% of the entire global smartphone market. Their revenue shot up to almost $20 billion. And their subscriber base, it grew to nearly 80 million people around the world. I mean, they were literally on top of the world. And then it happened. January 9th, 2007, Steve Jobs walks onto a stage and pulls a device out of his pocket that looked like it was from another planet. The iPhone had arrived. And for BlackBerry, this was the beginning of the end. They just didn't know it yet. This quote from Mike Lazaridis, the genius engineer behind BlackBerry, it just says everything. They were completely dismissive. He just couldn't wrap his head around why anyone would want to trade his perfectly engineered physical keyboard for a clumsy, smudgy piece of glass that drained your battery. In their eyes, the iPhone wasn't a revolution. It was a toy. And that right there, that's the core of the problem. RIM was built on this belief that what mattered most was efficiency for work, physical keyboards, long battery life, security. But what they missed, what Apple and soon Google's Android understood, was that the world was shifting. It was becoming a consumer-first world, driven by apps, entertainment, and the overall user experience. BlackBerry was selling a tool. Apple was selling a lifestyle. So what happened next wasn't one single knockout punch. It was more like a death by 1,000 cuts. A whole series of fumbled products and bad decisions that just made things worse and worse, as they desperately tried to play catch-up in a game they just didn't understand anymore. I mean, the series of failures was just relentless. Their first attempt at a touchscreen, the BlackBerry Storm, was a buggy disaster with this weird, clickable screen that everybody hated.
Then they launched a tablet, the Playbook, that, get this, couldn't do email out of the box. A BlackBerry product without BlackBerry email? All the while, the app gap was getting wider and wider as all the best developers went to iOS and Android. And the final nail in the coffin? A massive global network outage in 2011 that completely destroyed their #1 selling point, reliability.
And while all this was happening on the outside, the inside of the company was just paralyzed. That co-CEO structure, the engineer and the businessman that had been their greatest strength, it was now their biggest weakness. Lazaridis and Balsillie just couldn't agree on how to fix things. And while they argued, their competitors were just running laps around them. So by 2013, the company was on life support. The smartphone business was gone. It was time for a drastic change, a complete reinvention of what BlackBerry even was, or they would face total extinction. And that's when a new CEO, John Chen, came in. He took a hard look at the situation and made the gut-wrenching but absolutely necessary call. BlackBerry would stop making its own phones. He basically admitted they'd lost the phone wars and the only path to survival was to stop fighting a battle they couldn't win. So here was the new game plan. First, they'd license out that famous BlackBerry brand's name and let other companies make the phones. But the real BlackBerry would totally transform. They went back to their roots: enterprise, security, software. They decided to focus on the super complex worlds of cybersecurity and the rapidly growing Internet of Things. And this leads us to the most surprising chapter of the whole story, because while the BlackBerry phone we all knew is gone, the company itself is very much alive. So the question is, where exactly is BlackBerry today? So I'll ask you straight up, do you think BlackBerry is gone for good? Is it just a name you remember from the 2000s? Well, the answer is probably not what you think. Not even close. In fact, you probably interact with BlackBerry technology all the time and don't even know it. Today, their QNX software is a hidden giant in the car industry. It runs the critical infotainment and safety systems in over 275 million cars on the road right now. Yeah, that company you thought was dead is the secure software brain inside cars from Ford, BMW, Audi, you name it. When you look back, the BlackBerry story is a perfect textbook example of something called the innovator's dilemma. They were so good, so successful at serving their existing customers, giving them better keyboards, more battery life, that they were totally blind to the next big thing. They failed to see that a new, disruptive technology, the consumer smartphone, was about to make their entire world obsolete. BlackBerry's journey is just such a powerful lesson, isn't it? In the world of tech, being on top is temporary, and the next big disruption is always just around the corner. Hey, if you enjoyed this deep dive, do me a favor and hit that like button. It really helps out. And for a bit of fun, I'd love to see this. Comment below and tell us what your very first cell phone was. And of course, make sure you subscribe for more tech history explainers just like this one.